Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Metaworld News for the week ending 21st of January 2018. So we're all settled in now to the brand new year. Although I can't say that the news has got particularly active. I guess we have to wait for a bit more settling down in the new year for that to happen. The Consumer Electronics Show in America, of course, is over, and we got a bit last week on sort of things that are on show there. Various blogs have been commenting on things since then, but there isn't anything particularly new that we haven't mentioned already that is within our brief. The show, of course, is about virtual worlds, particularly social worlds, and particularly still about the hypergrid, which is based on open source, open simulator technology. But we do actually cover a bit of the old VR hardware and stuff, input-output devices that may be useful in various ways in the future, regardless of things like headsets, as it were, which we'll find out about in a minute. Okay, so you can find regular news from me, or rather links to news at Twitter, twitter.com/Malburns, M-A-L-B-U-R-N-S is the address you need. And the first stuff I'm going to be reading out here is really highlights. There aren't many of them actually from that feed. And if you miss the links I give you in voice, then just check out that feed. RoadToVR.com is my first link. They had a post early in the week, probably Monday, about VR chat. Now, VR chat is something I would really say is a sort of social virtual world. I actually went in there earlier in the week and realized that it's literally impossible to use it without VR kit. In other words, it doesn't play nice on my desktop at all. And I also, to get into it, I had to download another thing called Steam, which is an interim avenue into it. And quite frankly, I just wanted just simple. I was a bit annoyed that the VR chat isn't just a simple app I can load on the desktop and turn VR on if I want it. So that was my feeling about it. However, RoadToVR reported that VR chat itself has blasted past 1 million installs amidst a skyrocketing meme economy. This is not fake news, as far as I know, but there have been a number of other posts since that are suggesting that, the 1 million installs is not really representative of the people that are actually actively using it. And as is often the case with statistics, you can make things sound, by choosing the right statistic, a lot more impactful than they really are. But suddenly, 1 million people have installed this, and given the fact it seems to need a headset, it's quite a lot of people, really, isn't it? Anyway,
Mel, did you actually get into VR chat then?
Well, I got it open, but I couldn't do anything. It said click here to do something and would respond. So I just thought, quick, I'm not over this. Apparently I needed whatever response was needed. It wasn't going to accept a mouse to do it.
Okay.
So
yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I watched a video about a player that had a seizure in VR chat while other players were around. It was a player with a full body input suit, and so the people in the VR chat were watching this seizure happen and communicated into the virtual world. It's just interesting that VR chat popped up on my radar as well.
That's very interesting. I mean, that's I've heard of a lot of cases of that, almost actually since the internet age. Where something happens to somebody, and because it happens while they're online, people who know them, who they're online with, immediately respond. If somebody has a heart attack while they're in the virtual world, even if they haven't got a bodysuit, there may be somewhere they can assure quick help, or people can suss something is wrong and communicate out of world with somebody who can go and help them or something if they know enough details. So yeah, I mean, that's quite fascinating. Literally falling ill physically while you're wearing a bodysuit. I mean, I guess, everybody around you would see it. So,
Yeah, fascinating.
a benefit in that case. Interesting. Well, I will have another go because, oddly enough, that piece I just mentioned described VR chat as the social chat room for VR and non-VR users. Doing booming business, but as a non-VR user, i.e. a non-headset wearer, it didn't happen for me. So maybe I did something wrong, and I didn't like the idea of having to subscribe to the Steam business and then no difference. See, I just want one icon on my desktop, not a chain of intermediaries to get me there.
Right,
anyway,
layer upon layer, right?
Yeah, how many snooping devices are on each layer, But yeah, that's just me. Anyway, moving on. 5 days ago, also, VentureBeat had an article by Dean Takahashi. This one's actually about Linden Lab. It's actually disguised PR in a way. How companies can build VR space inside Linden Lab Sansar. This is not a Linden Lab press release. Basically, the CEO of Intel, Brian. Where did these names come from? Kruzanich. Apparently put Sansar in the spotlight during his keynote speech at the Consumer Electronics Show because Intel has spent 2.5 months building a replica of their booth inside Sansar, and they were involved with that build to do with Ready Player One and stuff like that. So Intel was sort of doing the PR for Linden Labs really on that front. VentureBeat basically have, gone inside, cruised around, come up with their own thoughts and had a little talk with Ebbe Altberg. And it's the PR machine at work. Obviously, you read these things and they make it sound a lot more glamorous than it really is. I mean, a one-hour teleport is not really very glamorous, so they just say teleport. You get the idea. Sorry, Linders. You've really got to speed up that thing of yours. Right, okay, I'm moving forward today to podcast number 33 from an occasional series really called psychologyofgames.com. So that's psychologyofgames.com. And if you can't spell psychology, then you can go to the dictionary. I'm not going to do it for you. Using games to develop mental skills. Very interesting podcast, actually. The idea is nothing really to do with hardware or haptics or anything like that per se. Just the fact that modern video games, including virtual worlds, require a lot of learning, problem solving, memory, planning, and other things that psychologists might identify as executive functions of the brain. So there you go. By playing games and possibly using virtual worlds, you are exercising the executive functions of your brain and keeping them fit and in fiddle. Even if you are sitting down unable to move from a chair because you haven't gone up and exercised for a year. The plus side of everything. Yeah, swings and roundabouts. Okay, a post to Engadget, Engadget, if you want to look it up, from Rachel England. Microsoft, yes, them. Microsoft is working on building scale, and that's in parentheses, inverted commas, as we say here in Europe. Building scale of VR for disaster simulations. They obviously want to scale it up to occupy areas larger in your living room. Now, obviously, you can say virtual reality and worlds are endless, but if you are using this VR kit, you are still enclosed by 4 physical walls, and you don't want to have too many collisions or you'll have permanent nosebleeds and things. So Microsoft is actually working on, when they say building scale, they mean simulations the size of whole buildings. So if there's a fire in a building, they can move in a virtual reality space that is true to life and, use it for training. Nothing particularly new there, but it's probably new for Microsoft, so there you go. Right, posted uploadvr.com. That's uploadvr, or one word. The VR is letters, of course. Uploadvr.com. The Surrogate is a Black Mirror style VR experience. Occasionally these things come up and I post them to the feed and mention them in the news here when they actually open. Yes, here we are. Black Mirror, if you've never heard of it, is a British TV series from Channel 4 that was, after the first series was so popular that Netflix bought it up, and I haven't actually seen any since because I don't use Netflix. But they're kind of short dramas based on near future, and you know they're kind of like a Whole Innocence, Dangerous Visions for the modern age. You know, sort of they're just, you know, barely past the present day, and they, you know, look at maybe some of the darker sides of things. And basically, they shine the spotlight on VR in one of their cautionary tales called The Surrogate. And but yeah, I think this is an app that launched on Oculus Rift, so I don't think you could use the desktop version, but it's a Black Mirror style episode that takes place in VR itself. In other words, you can't actually, it's not something you watch on TV unless they adapt it. It's something, you know, that you actually go into VR for the story, and it involves anxiety disorders and hiring a surrogate to replace her in the real world. And it's getting a bit weird, but interesting experiment by the sound of it, so you might want to check that one out. Another regular, almost every there's a new post from Voices of VR. That's all one word, voicesofvr.com. And it's a podcast, number 613. God, they creep up on you, these, don't they? Storytelling in VR from a depth, psychological and mythological perspective. Somebody called John Butler's book called Storytelling for Variety, Methods and Principles for Crafting Immersive Narratives. Which actually includes dozens of interviews with other people do. And so it's on that podcast, telling you all about it. Okay, and now, lastly, in this feed at least, today, roadtovr.com reports that new Vorpex, now this seems to be spelled VORP with a capital V, and then a suffix of X, which is a capital X, so it's VORPX. A new Vorpex feature makes non-VR games look and play better in VR. Now again, this thing does rather sound to me that you need to be using HTC Vive or an Oculus Rift to benefit from it. But basically it's a driver that goes into Windows, and it optimized the settings of things like desktop virtual worlds and things in order that they can be viewed in headset gear. Now, for example, we're based in OpenSim here and Hypergrid and everything else like that. I have yet to know, for example, I don't have a headset, but it's possible that this would allow me to open an OpenSim viewer, be it a Firestorm Singularity or something like that, and actually view it in a headset with this driver optimizing the screen to behave like VR, even though the client I'm using is really just a 2D screen program. So not that much information on that, but as I said, it's called Vorpex. But VR actually have a link to their site. Apparently the idea first became available back in the days of the Rift development kits, but it's now seriously updated, and its official name is Direct VR Settings Optimize, and it allows you to address field of view, resolution, and all sorts of stuff. And there's a list of about 90 games, virtual worlds that listed so far that will quite happily work with its conversion technology, I guess. Immersive screen mode. Yes. That's what it's all about. Immersive screen mode. That's a nice catchphrase, isn't it? Right, finally, another stating the obvious post from this morning, to be honest. This again is at Upload VR. Social VR success depends on humans, not headsets. Well, there you go. I couldn't agree more. You know, give me a platform, give me content, give me stuff I can do. Don't tell me that I've got to have, the latest 100 haptic attachments on my body to actually use your platform. I'm not going to go for it. I want something that I can use on a small screen on a mobile phone in an emergency, something I can use on a desktop fairly casually, preferably on the iPad too. And if on the rare occasion I want to stick a helmet on my head, or go into a bodysuit, or wear those super new shoes from last week, then maybe I'll do that too. But it's not going to be, it's going to be for a short visit. That's not going to be an everyday state of affairs, I'm afraid. I've got to walk around in that kit all day long. Okay, so that's it from my main Twitter feed. Now we have another Twitter feed, in fact, which is twitter.com/MetaWorldNews, as in the name of this show. And there are some things there that aren't. These tend to be hypergrid OpenSim specific, or very platform specific, like Hypergrid or SciSpace or whatever. Hyperbusiness.com, David Karuki did a post early in the week. OpenSim stats drop with the holidays and some various reporting issues. There have been a couple of posts from Hypergrid Business since then, but I have not posted them. Simply because, I'm not going to go into it, but there was one post today, for example, that was about one specific world, which actually isn't a Hypergrid world anyway. And I didn't like the way it was framed. It seemed to be, reading it independently, it didn't have any sympathy for the platform they were talking about. It didn't feel impartial. So I'm not going to, just for anybody listening, I'm not going to post Hypergrid Business or not any posts I don't, might feel like they're denigrating the platforms a bit. Anyway, moving on. It was a weird site, and I can't remember posting this. Oh, I do remember posting it. I just didn't know. The site is called Preservationnel. I'll come back to that in a minute. Basically, it's published January 14th, about a week ago. Virtual walls and preservation. And it's very just lightweight little thing. I think it came up through the Second Life blogs, to be honest. But it's showing examples of real-world places that they've built in-world, probably in this case in Second Life. But, the idea of preserving real-world buildings, in a virtual form. So quite interesting that. It is, the website is called preservationnel.com, and I'm going to have to spell this because the L at the end is like in the French female. It's PRESERVATION, as in preservation, and then on the end of that you've got ELLE, so it's all one word, preservationnel.com, and the author of that blog is apparently L, so it's preservation, her name, if you see what I mean. That figures. Okay, click. Right. Okay, a couple of days ago, so remember, of course, posted a regular shot in hgsafari.blogspot.com. Safari farm. I'm very much putting up the perpetrator of this farm, Zephyr, onto this show at some point. There were two visits to Safari. I forget what the other one was offhand. I'm not interested in farming, and if you invite me to go and look at a virtual farm or something, my initial reaction is, I'll go along, show my support. It's like some concert you go to where you really don't want to listen to the music, but you want to show your support, so you turn up and turn off sound and go away. But this is remarkable. Yes, sorry.
Well, I just wanted to mention we've had a little bit of drop in audio quality And
Oh,
I can't tell, of course, if it's here or there. But uh, why don't you give me another test again?
okay. Well, nothing should have changed here. The microphone is still stuck up our nose.
Yeah, yeah.
Same position, and there shouldn't really be any difference.
Okay, it's back now. It had just lost some fidelity, and there was a little bit of breakup, but I think you're back. So
Okay.
excuse the interruption.
Okay, no problem. It's what we call the weblins. I mean the web
That's right.
gremlins. I mean the gremlins of the web, or the you know the things in the pipes.
Right.
We need to have a new profession, a web plumber. You know, oh, you need to call the plumber to clear my pipes. So never mind. Yeah. Anyway, so even though I wasn't tempted to really go looking at farming, this was actually quite interesting because it was actually a very small space, and there was a whole farm, and yeah, the avatar's name is Sartorion, and sometimes known as Sartagaba, and I'm very much hoping to get him onto his show, or our talk show, in World Review, in fact, at some point. You know, to talk about scripting and things, because this farm was just a masterpiece of an achievement, whether you're into farming or not. All the animals on this farm were breedables, right? Which is something Second Life game users kind of maybe used to, but it's pretty rare in open sim. But they don't have a back end on the web, you know, where you buy food and, you know, for money basically have these cute little pets. You've got to feed them yourself, and this involves actually wandering around to pick up wood, light fires, boil water in the kitchen, pick up ingredients for cooking, making a kind of slop for the cattle, and making other kinds of food for the different animals that don't like the slop. And then you've got to take it to them and feed it to them, and everything in this cycle of feeding and stuff like that is scripted. You've actually got to do it. For example, if you pick up some wood to put on the fire, it's got a script, and the piece of wood you picked up doesn't go into your inventory. And it doesn't actually attach to you. It just follows you to where you're going, and then you click on it again to drop it on the ground. And when you drop it on the ground in the right place, it connects to another script that, you know, builds the fire or something, that kind of thing. So there's an awful lot of participatory activity rigged here. You know, you can stand there for hours looking at it and think, oh, everything's moving around and stuff happening, and not realize that other avatars around you are mostly working together to control what's happening, or independently. So it's a lovely piece of scripting, and it wasn't particularly laggy or anything like that. It was a bit difficult to get into. It was very slow to res when you arrived at the landing spot, but once it had resed and you could get to the bit where the farm was, it was very quick, and the farm itself was too. So it sounds like the mechanics were working really fast, even if the grid it's on might have been not, you know, the most perfectly fast. And anyway, that was excellent. You can read all about it on hgsafari.blogspot.com. Yeah, we'll hear more from Tata shortly. Scrolling down the page here, I'm just trying to toggle my memory of what came next. Oh, yes, well, I know why I can't remember. The next stop was at Tangle Grid. You may remember Leslie Kling, who's been on the show quite often. And they went to a thing called Wonderland, which, based on the pictures, is a mystical haven. It's absolutely wonderful kind of build. For some reason, though, I was not able to teleport in Tangle Grid. I couldn't get there from the previous location, and it didn't just refuse me entry, it crashed my viewer. So I relogged. This time I was obviously on my region. The same thing, it crashed the viewer again, and quite frankly, it wasn't just refusing me entry, it was crashing my viewer. After about 12 attempts, me being me, I thought, well, I'm sorry. We love you, Leslie, but if you can't let me into Tangle Grid, I'm sorry. I don't have all day. I'm not going to spend the whole 9 minutes trying to get in, and then put it on the possibility I'll arrive 1 minute before it's all over. But anyway, the reports for to get in sounds like that was a wonderful little visit. And finally, a blog from literally just before the show came on air, although it was actually posted on January 21st. Oh, yeah, no, that is today, isn't it? Yes, sorry, I'm getting confused. It's called Ruth 2.0. This is on Austin Tate's blog. He publishes, a blog whenever there's something interesting, not a regular blogger by any hub. But Ruth 2 is, and Roth, which is the male version, are what's called low polygon, that is mesh avatar bodies specifically designed for Open Simulator, and they're built to use the standard Second Life Linden Lab UV maps, but using scratch built open source mesh bodies by somebody called Shin Ingen, with other open source contributions from the OpenSim community. And basically, it's Ruth 2 and Ross 2 sort of pretty much already. They give a link to the Google Plus community page, which is a long string of numbers that I have no intention of reading out. There's a GitHub repository, and it's actually at the Outworlds servers. So it's github.com/outworlds with a Z/Ruth. But you can also go to get and see pre-built avatars by going to on the hypergrid. You go to login.digiworlds, that's DIGIWORLDZ, which is hypergrid enabled grid. .com. So login.digiworlds.com, port is 8002, and the location you want is Ingen Lab. That's INGEN space LAB. And you can also get a clothing layer applier for these advanced avatars by going to grid.hgluv, in other words, hglove.com. And the port number there is an odd one. It's 8302. And the destination you want when you get there is Love Plaza. So that's LUV space Plaza, PLAZA. So if more about these wonderful low poly mesh avatar bodies, the next step in avatar evolution, I guess, exclusive to OpenSim. Right, that's it for my main Twitter feed. Oh, sorry, that was the Metaworld news feed, wasn't it? Just before we start rounding up, I'm having a quick look at Google Plus to see if there's anything there that I missed. Yeah, replays of our own shows. If you were watching In World Review last week, our guests were actually an artist called Art Blue and Juliet Surreal Dreaming. I did go to their show as promised on Monday, and I did film some of it. I missed the actual start, and I didn't stream it, so time will tell while I piece together for highlights. But meanwhile, Wizard Oz Chrome has published at YouTube About Sound by Venus Adored and the performance of Metropolis Grid, blah, 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 on Monday. And there's an embed on Google Plus where you can actually see that video. She says by Venus Adored, incidentally. I mean, although it was Art and Juliet's kind of show, the order particles and the special effects were actually Venus Adored. So she was very much visually the main focus of the show. And yeah, that's it for that. So I think we're at the end of it for another week. But before we go, of course, we're going to always, as we do, just get a few words from James on the state of the OpenSim hypergrid developers community. So James.
Yeah, hi Mel. Thanks. It's interesting that you mentioned about the Ruth and Roth 2.0 because that was a part of the conversation at the OpenSim developers meeting. So to be clear, this is a meeting that happens at 1 p.m. or excuse me, 11 a.m. On the OpenSim the OS grid, and it's a place for developers.
11.
Oh,
11 a.m. Pacific time.
11 a.m. Pacific. Yes, correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thanks, Mel.
Just in case people are watching Honolulu or something.
Are we all in the same time zone?
I don't know. I don't know. No, we should be, but I'm still trying to work that one out.
Yeah, a global community with all these separations. But no, I don't need to be snarky. But no, interesting because I arrived to discussion at these office hours, and there was a little bit of discuss about these new meshes. Again, it's a well populated meeting, a bunch of good folks there, and talked a little bit about working on some non-core code, branch work that a developer was working on. With a little bit of discussion again about vehicle crossings, which is a popular server topic, and then discussion went back to the Ruth 2.0, and it was really hard to say what was going on, but there was something with the viewer settings, the SL viewers versus the Open Simulator viewers, and compatibility with these new meshes. And I had a hard time following the discussion, but it came back to that comment we've had before about meshes, is that there are meshes that had been accepted but weren't properly designed or designed to a certain specification. And I would suggest you go online to read the notes at opensimulator.org in the developer office hours, because I had a little difficulty following it. Just that it was a familiar discussion about meshes will work in Open Simulator if they're well designed. That's a recurring topic, I think. So that's about it.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I noticed in that piece I just read out that, Open Simulator and everything else, but there was one reference to the fact that they use SL approved UV maps or something. I thought, well, this is an Open Sim thing, isn't it? I mean, what the heck has SL approved UV mapping got to do with it? Yeah, it should be OpenSim compatible UV mapping, whatever that might be. So the reference, that's slightly disturbing, the reference to using something that's Linden approved. Maybe they work in both places, but it's pitched as an OpenSim thing, so it's OpenSim mapping that counts, not as mapping. Again, it's the sort of thing that would confuse me. It's like if you move away from bullet physics to UBOD or these other things that are options in Open Simulator, some of your meshes won't work anymore because some meshes will just come in like a single object with a shape, and they're recognized not only by the texture of the shape, but also they're solid and you can walk on them unless you set them to phantom. But technically, every mesh that's visual should have a collision mesh, and the collision mesh is what dictates what you walk on. The visual mesh is simply the appearance of it, and they go by sort of different rule books. And I imagine an avatar that's a mesh is following the similar rules. You have a collision element so you can bump into it rather than walk through it, if you see what I mean. It's far from easy stuff. I'm sure for those who know what they're doing, it is probably pretty easy. But I know from my humble experiments with this sort of thing, and I say humble meaning I've given up completely, that it is not easy unless you have an aptitude for it, and it's quite a big learning curve. But there are people that are absolutely brilliant with these things, so we'll see. But certainly the idea of having a more advanced avatar, as part of the Open Simulator code support, is rather nice. It means we've got something Lindens don't have, I think. Anyway, I'm just checking the last 1,000 text messages telling me I'm wrong. I'm the news guy. I'm the news guy. I'm not the news guy. Sorry, I am the news guy. I'm not the tech. I'm not the tech expert. So
the messenger.
Yeah, exactly. Don't kill the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. That's it. Okay, well, that's it for this week. So thanks to James for helping me out here. And we will be back same time next week with whatever is new and worthy of blabbering on about then. So have a good week, folks. We'll see you then. Bye.